With example number 17, we're looking at g of x being equal to 3 times the cosine of x, and we're interested in the second derivative, evaluated at pi over 4. So we got to get our first derivative, then we got to get our second derivative, and then we have to plug in pi over 4. So let's go for our first derivative. G of x is 3 times the cosine of x. We want g prime of x. 3 is a coefficient. We know from the earlier rules that the coefficients move right from the function to the derivative. So the 3 will move right in. And then we have to take the derivative of cosine. Cosine derives to negative sine x. Okay? So if we put down negative sine x, there's our first derivative. But we've got to be careful, because this doesn't look like 3 times negative sine x. This looks like 3 minus sine x, and that would be incorrect. We want 3 times negative sine x. So if you're going to write it in this manner, you want to make sure that you have parentheses around that opposite of sine. Now we see the multiplication. Without those parentheses, it looks like subtraction. So please be careful in that regard. Even better, since we really have negative 1 times the sine of x, and this is 3 times that, we really have the negative 1 times the 3. The best way to write this derivative would be negative 3 sine x. Now it's ready to go for our second derivative. Now we can get g double prime of x. Negative 3, once again, is a coefficient, so it moves down into the second derivative. And then we take the derivative of sine, which brings us back to cosine. So we have negative 3 cosine x as our second derivative in general. Ultimately, we want the second derivative evaluated at pi over 4. So we're going to plug pi over 4 into our second derivative, which means we have negative 3 times the cosine of pi over 4. We have to go back to our common value chart for trig. Cosine of pi over 4 is the square root of 2 over 2. So this will be equal to negative 3 times the square root of 2 all over 2.